I'd like to call the meeting of the Environmental Review Board to order. And it's January 28th and first meeting of the year. And do you need to appoint an acting chair?
I guess theoretically we're supposed to. I don't know how we do it when we only have 3 people here. Unless I,
As we've done before, make
Right.
a motion to elect John Rosenblum as acting chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
First piece of business done.
Okay. Okay, welcome everybody.
Thank you.
First item on the agenda is the Wymark Residence, 777 Armonk Road. And we have Bill and Keiko Spade here. To present.
The full power of the sermon.
Yep.
So, I'll throw that out in front of you first. This is the property on Armonk Road, Route 128. It's a roughly 5.6, I think, or 5.3 acre property.
Where, orient us a
Okay.
little bit, where on Armonk Road is it?
Past, I keep forgetting, I think it was at Labriola or the other landscape company. Alfredo, thank you, Ben. Alfredo's Nursery.
Mm-hmm.
It's immediately south of the former Legionaries of Christ property.
Okay,
In fact, so,
and it's on the east side of Armonk Road, on 128.
Yes.
yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the Legionaries property is all of this up here. So so it's a very narrow, 125 feet, it's like diagonal even, frontage on Route 128, 770 feet long, deep. So I have no idea how this got created. The house was originally built in the mid 1800s, so 1850, 1860, beautiful stone foundation. And it has been expanded a couple of times over the years. Don't know, it might have been the original farmhouse for that area, and parcels around it got, subdivided off to other users over time. Certainly seems like it would have had a bigger plot of land it existed on. In its front yard is a large pond. You can see that in the drawing, the survey there. That is part of a network of water that continues up. You've all been to the Legionaries property for any reason over the last couple of years. I know there have been other proposals there. So it's substantially wetlands all through this front area, including that pond. The house is about 150 feet from the edge of the water, and then we have the house. The original house was about 24 feet deep in terms of the depth of the house. About 28 feet wide was the original house. I'll show some house plans shortly. Then it has about a 40-foot deep backyard behind the house, and then begins a steep sloped rock face that goes uphill from behind this stone wall. So, and then continues up, flattens out in some areas at the top, up and over a ridge. I think it starts coming back downhill a bit over on the back end here. But essentially the house is sandwiched between the wetlands area and the pond in the front and this steep slope hillside in the back. And its width, the property width at the house itself is about 122 and a half, or 132 and a half feet. So it's kind of sandwiched already in between the lot lines. It's in a 2-acre zone, so the setback requirements are 45 feet on the side yards. So the house itself already exists well into the zoning setbacks to either side. So any work done on the house, and as we're proposing here, we're going to need zoning variances to do any additions. The owner is proposing to do an addition on the house and you see that depicted here, and this is the same plan, if you want to look at that. We've cross-hatched the areas that are proposed. There's supposed to be an addition on the left-hand side of the house to build a new two-car garage, and on top of that is a great room. On the main part of the house, you see depicted, we're proposing to build a third story on the house to be able to add square footage to the property. The existing bedrooms on the second floor, it's a 4-bedroom house. All of the existing bedrooms are very small. And so they would like to be able to modify the second floor and increase the bedroom sizes and then build a third floor with a master bedroom suite on the third floor. Given the size of the property, the 5.5 acres in total, the amount of addition that we're proposing is still only half of the square footage that could be built on a lot this size in the 2-acre zone. Same for essentially development coverage. I think and building coverage, I think we're only at about half of the permitted square footages that could be built on a lot this size. Obviously, the narrowness of the lot produces the challenges in terms of trying to do additional work there. Back on the wetlands then, in terms of doing these proposed additions, as you can see depicted, we've had the wetlands delineated. Paul Janig did the delineation. And I have a small scale map, color map here. Pass that around. This is a blow up of the front portion of the property with the house and the pond. And so the sort of greenish shaded area beyond the pond is the delineated wetlands, and that's depicted with the heavy dash line on the map, and that comes off the survey that's been done by Link surveyors. So the setback, 150-foot setback requirement for the wetland buffer in the 2-acre zone, you see depicted, extends to, for the most part, covers the backyard of the property, of the behind the house. So most anything that would be proposed or could be proposed on the property in terms of development around the house is within the buffer area. So again, we've got an addition on the left side. We've got an addition on top of the house, which is fully over the existing footprint of the house. The other component that's being proposed is a patio around a pool in the rear yard. The pool, the owner wanted to get started. We started talking about the addition. He wanted to get the pool going, so we submitted separately a pool permit. That got approved. However, in that process, nobody really picked up that we should probably be looking at what the wetlands was. And frankly, I thought...
pool permits?
The building department issued a building permit, and they were working under the assumption that it was shown as a 100-foot buffer. So they were outside of the wetland. They never had me look at it.
Yeah.
But the site plan that they submitted had a 100-foot buffer. The pool was outside of that buffer area, so they issued inadvertently a building permit. When Bill came in to talk about these other changes, that's when I looked at it and said, this is an overlay in a 150-foot buffer, and so they had the wetland boundary flagged and survey located, so, the pool.
Was the pool permit withdrawn?
It hasn't been withdrawn at this point. What I suggested to Bill is, he's gonna have to, get a wetland permit for this. I have to talk to the building inspector to see whether it can be overturned, based on this information, or.
Well,
or
why would that not be automatic?
I don't know. I've never dealt with those issues, whether they have rights because they issued a, building permit under a certain set of circumstances.
Had you filed the pool permit?
Yeah, Well, technically the pool company filed the pool permit, we
Is it
provided
a separate pool, is there really something called a pool permit, or
No.
is it a
No, no,
It's a
building?
building permit
It's a
for a
building
pool.
permit for a pool,
Correct.
Did they, was the pool permit issued? or
Yes,
just-
oh yeah. So they've excavated the hole, that's as far as they got before the weather that held them back. So right now there's a hole in the backyard.
Correct.
But it was we provided the site plan and showed a patio area right around the pool that was within the zoning setbacks. So that was kind of the big focus. Everybody was, all right, we gotta stay within the zoning setbacks and showing where those were. And I think just because it was in the rear yard, nobody kind of
So-
thought that it could be within a buffer.
So at the time you did that though, were they not anticipating the changes to the structure too?
No, we were talking about it already, yeah. So we
But
decided.
if you knew you were gonna need zoning variances for that,
Yeah.
why would anybody have allowed
We did,
a piecemeal permit to be?
They just applied for a pool permit.
yeah, so
They didn't
A,
provide any other information.
there wasn't a zoning variance needed for the
There's no other
pool.
variances needed for anything.
Well, no, but you're not supposed to piecemeal these kinds of applications if you know
No,
that there's
that's-
one
well-
big project coming.
Yeah, I think the idea was the pool was a separate
It's a separate company.
piece, a separate company. It would have been
yeah.
the same, it wouldn't have been the same permit anyhow, cause it's a separate company.
It would have been the same environmental review for one thing. The zoning board is obligated to follow secra, as is this board.
Yeah, again, the pool didn't require any zoning work. Pool is compliant to the zoning. And but there was conversations about what's the extent of a patio around a pool that would still remain compliant with the zoning, but the permit was issued based on a zoning compliant pool.
So it was issued in error, not with the right information.
Not with
provided.
the wetland setback
Right.
consideration. And again, I think, even for me, the pond is in the front yard. There's a band of construction that separates the pond from the rear yard. I never even thought about the setback. I also thought though that, the pond was probably the water course, and therefore I knew the house was at least 150 feet from the pond. All right, we're fine anyhow. But in any event, it was an oversight on our part, and we've added that patio area. Therefore, back to the point, we've added that patio area that the owner would like to do. What you're seeing is patio area that he's proposing, and therefore, obviously, that patio area needs the wetland permit to cover that. And there's patio both within the buffer, what we're accounting for in our calculation, for the calculation in the upper right part of the sheet, shows the calculation of impervious surface area within the buffer, proposed impervious.
What material is being proposed for the patio?
Paver on stone dust, whether it's a stone paver or whether it's some other manufactured material paver, but a paver on stone dust.
The area behind,
The wall, yeah,
This
that's a
wall.
stone wall, right?
this is a new stone wall.
No, existing, that's been there probably for,
Is this structure
that's,
part of it?
yes, that's being built as part of the pool. That's for the pool heating equipment.
So it's gonna modify the stone wall?
Correct.
Where's the stone wall? I'm missing.
That double line,
For this?
that one, right. So that's an existing, roughly 3 foot high stone wall. And behind it begins the embankment of and actually you can see, this is a little clearer in terms of that stone wall's at the base of this cliff hillside. So we cut into that stone wall a bit to create the pad for the pool equipment.
area.
Right.
So yeah, I was just explaining, so the chart in the upper right side shows the total square footage of impervious area within the buffer. And then as a mitigation, we're proposing to create a vegetated strip around the pond to protect it from, as a protection strip. So we show the total square footage of that vegetated area around the pond, and we're at about I think more than 3-to-1 replacement area for impervious coverage versus the wetland buffer strip.
Your numbers should be opposite then.
Say it again?
Are these correct, the numbers? Because you're only showing 6,000 square feet of mitigation.
Yeah. Versus what?
Well, you're showing a 13,000
Yeah.
disturbance,
That doesn't
so that really indicates you're doing
greater.
Half,
Oh, I
half,
don't know.
not 2 to 1.
No, so that 13,000, honestly, I never noticed that.
that's why I'm questioning, because that looks like.
Oh, no, that's the total, sorry. So if you see at the top, we have a total development coverage of 11,000. That's existing, right? 11,000 is existing development
That's
coverage.
existing or existing and proposed?
Existing. And then we have 1,938 as proposed new. So that creates the total of 13,028.
Because it says up above, you have 11,090 as existing coverage in the buffer.
Correct. That's pre-existing coverage in the buffer.
Right, so
we're
the 13
we're
is probably
increasing.
the total,
Yes,
existing and new.
and new, right? So we're increasing the impervious coverage in the buffer by 1,938, right? So we're proposing 6,500 of mitigation, so
Okay, that
3
makes
times
sense.
the new for our mitigation.
Does that include the pool?
Includes the pool.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, so sorry if that, I wasn't clear about that, so,
And
no,
the pool
I
is,
just-
the pool is 500, is 545.
right.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question before we go into that. Is there, has it even been looked at to move any of this outside?
Impossible,
This is the land.
Impossible.
impossible.
This is the wall you're looking at.
Right.
This is the,
No, from this.
like, extreme
Yeah,
steep.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not,
And
we're not,
rock.
even- we're not allowed
Actually,
to.
it's actually rock.
This is the center.
Majority is rock.
That's the buffer
Everything.
line.
But
Everything's in.
Everything is
anything
in
looked at
except for this.
moving things out of this and whether you do something up on the rock or?
It's not
create
possible, it's not possible. It's a
really
steep
steep.
slope, it's a rock, it's mostly rock, so it's not possible to go
Oh, it's
into that
possible,
hillside.
it's not,
Wow,
it's expensive, it's difficult, but it's not impossible.
Right.
yeah, right.
Just to,
Extremely
Maybe I
expensive.
should say it's impractical.
no,
Impractical would be the correct word.
it's certainly tougher than digging in
Yes.
soil,
Right.
that is for sure.
And maybe one thing I just wanted, I should have said at the beginning, the current owner bought the property about a year ago. Bought it from a bank, it was in on foreclosure, had been in foreclosure for about 4 years, it was vacant property, had been substantially vandalized. So the conditions here were the conditions that were pre-existing in terms of both the narrowness of the lot and various other conditions. You can see in some places there were encroachments that the prior owner had apparently built into the adjacent land, adjacent properties. And so the present owner has been trying to rectify a number of these kinds of, not terribly legal conditions of the property, but has made a substantial investment in trying to, bring the property
Yeah,
back to.
relocating the driveway so that, we can eliminate that part of.
Right. So, so then beyond that, they're just looking to create the value that they can for, the conditions of the existing lot.
Did they live there?
They live
Yeah,
in
who are they?
Winemarks? Bill and Jessica. Bill's actually lived in town for a while. Newly married.
I think they used to live over on Crow Hill.
Correct.
Yes.
On where?
On
Crow Hill Road.
Crow Hill Road?
Road.
Yeah. actually did work for him on that house he lived in there. And he lived in random farms for a while and then bought this property. So again, I mean, maybe just to make sure I'm clear, in terms of the new impervious versus the mitigation area we're proposing, am I correct to say we're at a 3-to-1 ratio of new mitigation versus new impervious, right? And then lastly, maybe we proposed the planting scheme for that buffer strip around the lawn. I don't know why I brought up about him buying the property. One aspect of this is that the entire ground area from the driveway to the pond is lawn, and in fact, I have photographed the lawn area continues over onto the neighbor's property. So the prior owner had been treating, the whole area, including a significant part of the
way
adjacent
is
lot.
this
Sorry,
looking?
yeah, I can tell you. That would help, right?
Yeah.
That tree is that tree, and I'm standing here photographing back this way. So his lot line is roughly just to the inside of this tree. So this side is his lot, but over here, a lot of area over here is still lawn. And it was lawn that was being maintained by that property, the prior property owner. We don't have any information to know whether that was some kind of agreement with the long time was the Legionaries of Christ was the owner of that adjacent property. So no knowledge as to whether there was some agreement between them and the prior owner of this lot to create that lawn area, but that's a pre-existing condition. So it certainly is part of what that is. Mr. Weimark's willing to propose this buffer area around the pond that's on his property, and then also is proposing to have a no pesticide, no fertilizer treatment for that lawn area.
Do
up
you have
to
any
the
pictures
pond.
going this way?
Yeah, sure, it's of the house, yes. Right here. Actually, I'll have to pull everything out. This is that property, there's a, yes, that's from the front, this is from the rear. So that view is kind of standing here, looking back at
Oh,
the
it's
house.
this.
Yes, that
Yes.
little one.
It's not this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that other house is an example of what could be done.
This way, right?
That's right.
If it wasn't so narrow, could have.
Sorry, and then this is the rear yard.
That's the front.
Oh, that's the house. I've been trying to figure out which one it is.
Oh, yeah?
I was
You
trying
familiar
to.
with it?
Yeah, I was just, I was racking my brain, like, where the hell is it? That now I'm very visual, so now I know where it is.
Yeah, sorry, I could,
You can see the hill in the back.
yeah.
Yeah, you see the hill actually.
How old is the house? You say it was built back in
Originally
the...
1850s. So
Really?
the original house, so that, you can see sort of a 28-foot here. Put that down. So this block, even I think it's up to the other side of this window, that original block, and it's this wide, was a 28-foot wide, 4-foot deep, 1850s house.
So the house itself is not, you're not expanding on it's just going up on the house.
We're going
You're
up.
above
Yeah,
things.
so the
You're
proposal
not-
is to build a third story here.
Right, but you're not going out on the house. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing
Going up.
forward, but on the left side, we are building out another 2-car,
Okay.
Over here.
20-foot,
Oh, a
20-foot
garage.
width
Yeah.
there.
So that'll be over here?
Correct.
Correct.
And that's in order to correct the,
That
right now, this existing driveway is the only way that you can get into these garage doors. It's only, the garage face is only 22 feet from the property line. Why they ever, permitted that when they permitted the original, addition that created the garage doors on this side, but at 22 feet, it's impossible to turn a car to get into those garages, and so this presumably, again, we don't know if he got permission from the owner, the lot owner or not, but he built a driveway all the way in another 15 feet into the
Oh, I see.
next property. So to take that away, we're proposing the garage here and being able to bring the garage doors to the front of the house.
Okay.
So say, another point might be, we are,
How far is this from that house?
how far is that?
Yeah, how far is
Boy, I think this house is about 450 feet from Armonk Road, so if you take, if this is 450,
See, it's not that
roughly
far.
450.
That hollow dot,
No,
right? I mean, you got that huge structure right there.
yeah, I mean, this is all trees though, so
I know.
presumably.
Well, the thing is, it's
The
like,
huge structure is gonna be torn down, actually.
this?
The Legion.
Oh, is that the least?
No,
No, this
so
is
that's
a house.
engineers.
That's a house.
That's
Oh,
not the
That's,
Legionnaires.
that's the one on
This is
Fairbank,
Hollow
yeah?
Ridge.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's Hollow Ridge, so I don't know, I'm just wondering,
Legionnaires is up here.
yeah.
What are you wondering, Ted?
no, I'm not wondering, I'm just saying, look, if, when you have these structures here where, this is where the pool is going to, this is all, where all the pool is and everything here?
No, right immediately
Right
behind the
in here.
house.
Right in here, right?
in
Yeah,
here,
that's
yeah.
the only
Okay.
usable land,
yeah.
yeah.
Right, so right there,
Yeah.
that's what
Right.
we're talking about.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and I
Yeah, you
think
probably, when there are leaves on the trees, you probably can't even see the
You
two
can
houses
see
from
No.
each other.
the sort of
you can barely see, you see like it's got
of this right
a
here on
pergola
this.
at the back of his, I guess it shows us, there's a pergola at the back
You
of
can
this
see the
pool.
slopes
You
here.
can see the top of the pergola from his property, but it's about 100-foot, maybe more height difference between
Yeah,
this property and
Oh, okay.
that one.
yeah, it's like, I thought there was the one with the elevation on
The survey shows that. Oh no, the survey doesn't have the topo on
it.
it.
I thought there was the topo.
Doesn't seem like
What's
that,
that?
doesn't seem that hill.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
Yeah.
was-
it goes up, but it's not that.
Right.
Oh, it's about 100 feet,
Up?
maybe more, yeah.
Okay.
Now you look at,
That topo over there,
Yeah.
yeah.
you have that topo on there.
You can see him.
It just goes right up.
Those are, I don't know if I could even venture to say what
It's
those,
like, this is like
It's
556 is
So this
here.
is 60 feet right here.
Yeah, at least.
That's
And
490,
I think
so-
their road is like maybe 566 area, if it's, their house is over here, or higher. The higher spot is 590 here, and this is even higher, 600.
Bill, is the propane tank proposed, or?
yes, proposed for the pool. Underground.
So what's your thoughts?
I'd still like to see something that reduces this and tries to move it farther back. The fact that a pool is being built without any consideration of the wetland setback is a little troubling
Yeah.
on my part. Understanding that there may or may not be ledge low, but could things be moved around to push the pool and its area back and hardscape modified to create less impervious surfaces in the regulated area.
Do we know
It's a-
what that
it's a
area is
question.
behind?
Yeah, it's a rock hillside.
It's all, is it all exposed, so?
A lot of exposed. There's a few trees on it, but the trees grow along the rock hillside still. It is impractical to try to do anything into that hillside.
Has it been examined?
Nope. Nope. But you would have to create, it's literally probably a 3-in-1 slope. So every foot back, maybe 2-in-1, every foot back, you'd have to create a 2-foot high wall. So if you go back 10 feet, you're gonna create a 20-foot high wall. Just,
A wall?
yeah.
Like a retaining wall?
A retaining wall. You're building into a hillside. So,
If it's rock, that would,
what's that?
if it's rock, a retaining wall?
If
What you're
it's-
saying is you could use a natural rock as your.
It's just,
Right,
it's
that-
another
I
thing
mean-
to think about, it's
Right.
It's impractical. Nobody
I mean,
would, nobody
I
would,
know,
nobody would propose that.
I know plenty of people who've ended up doing that.
Alright.
I mean, the house part, at least to me, modifying the existing structure,
Yeah,
doesn't seem to be as, you're already, this area here,
Right, I mean, there's very little new footprint, so.
Yeah.
it was, by the way, this was already disturbed land. So what we found in here was fill already, probably from the correct construction of the house. So I
makes
find.
sense.
That's
yeah.
one ameliorating factor, I guess.
Yeah.
As you said, it's that the land was already disturbed and it's on the upland side of the house
Right.
from the
Right.
wetland.
I mean, I certainly would
but-
concur that,
You probably know, Bill, that this board has had a historic problem
yeah,
with pools in the buffer. And
honestly, don't, but we understand that.
It's one of the few things that we've had a pretty bright line test about.
Oh, yeah,
And there has to be really kind
Oh.
of overwhelming reasons to depart from that.
right,
In part because of the precedential
yeah,
issue.
right,
You know, that if you approve one, then
Right.
everybody else is gonna come in,
right,
you know, asking,
Sure.
saying you did it for him. And,
Sure.
You know, we've had a couple of situations that ended up getting pretty uncomfortable because we turned down pools
huh,
in the buffer.
yeah,
So it's not something that the board does lightly at all.
yeah,
Again, to the extent that it's on the upland side of an existing structure and the scientific issues, the actual impact on the buffer and the wetland may be somewhat attenuated because of that,
yeah,
you know, works in favor of allowing it, but I would be hesitant to do it without fully examining the ability, practicality of doing something outside. You know, patio would be one thing, especially if you make it, you know, again, so that it's not fully impermeable,
yeah,
you know,
right,
pavers in sand and
Right.
stone dust and things as opposed to concrete or.
yeah,
But pool's a big issue. I mean, what happens if you move the pool over to this corner? I mean, it doesn't look like it's that big. Looks like there is an area,
yeah, certainly,
What does this line mean?
that's a
that's a stone wall.
That's a
That's
stone
the
wall.
bottom of the slope.
So, yeah, I mean, this is proposed, what is this?
Stepping stones.
Stepping stone?
That's probably right here.
Yeah,
I mean, why?
This is all the outdoor kitchen, this is a patio.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you put something, I mean, why?
Because that was side yard setback of 45 feet, we
Oh,
tried
Yeah, I
to go
mean,
in
yeah.
between.
right, so the original proposal
but
of the
the-
pool was to,
well, you know.
And they were happy.
Again, you
You're
got no
going-
setbacks on
You're
this.
going for.
You're going for setback approvals anyway.
Yeah, there's no setbacks on this.
And it's not like
You're-
there's, and
you're
it's not like
referencing.
there's a house right on the other side of the property line.
Right, I don't know what the, yeah, I mean, what's the,
It just that was their preference in terms of where the pool would go,
Wow.
right? They
The entity
would
that
rather-
filed it was able to file it that way without going for a variance, and
Correct.
that's why they filed it that way.
Correct.
Makes sense.
Right, but that wasn't the, just to be clear, that wasn't the driving factor, the driving factor was
This
they
is
wanted
patio
it
here.
in the
Right.
middle of that yard and behind
Because
the
it's
house.
accessible from
Or
There's
sure,
a-
put the
house.
patio in or
And
put
they
the,
could do it without variances.
Put the
and
pool-
we-
Right.
we-
Yeah.
there's a lot of,
all that
I mean,
stuff.
you got a lot
And
of
they can
patio.
watch kids from the inside
Sure.
house
You want a
instead
pool or
of
patio?
maybe had to be,
Both.
you can't really see that corner.
right.
You have to
Yeah.
watch them from outside.
I
I mean, again,
understand.
it's a zone that's disconnected from the wetland, so there's no direct impact of that area to the wetlands. Everything that you would be concerned about in terms of protection of the wetlands has gotta be done in the front yard, irregardless of whatever you do in the backyard. So I would just submit that moving the pool around doesn't create any benefit to protecting the wetlands or doing anything to improve it. It would, their preference is for the pool to be
Well,
where
I
it's
understand what their
proposed.
preference is, but we don't always get our preference.
Bill, one other question is, the wetland goes right through the middle of where you show your septic. Is that accurate?
That's existing. Yeah,
And did they ever have their septic tested? I mean, is
they've
it,
had their tank pumped, nobody's ever done
I mean,
it.
are these fields functional?
Yeah, they're lived it for a year.
According to this, it's half of it's
Yeah,
in
I don't know.
in the wetland, not,
Right.
you know.
Right, no, that's,
Well, there's nothing legal about this property, so.
No, no, I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
it
that's the-
predates
yeah.
right.
the
Right.
wetland ordinance, but it was just,
I mean, the septic being there might even be different from what the, you know, where the leach pit was, right next to the house
I mean, I
originally
think,
maybe.
you know, we may wanna, you know, have a letter from the health department or something that it's verifies that it's still working,
Okay,
you know, and just because of its location.
huh,
Cause if
okay,
you ever have a, you know, that fails, where are you gonna put in,
Yeah.
replacement?
right, no, there,
If you flip to the second page of this, it gives you a little.
oh, yeah, I didn't
Well,
do that.
Yeah, a little bit larger.
Put the pool here, fire pit here.
Again, my point would be, what's the benefit of that?
There doesn't have to be a benefit. The problem is the statute and the regulations say that you can't.
Well, then you're gonna replace a pool with a patio. What's the
Right.
difference between the pool and the
Well,
patio?
for one thing, we
Well,
could
you could
require
keep
you
the
to make it
patio
impervious.
grass, yeah.
Right, you can make it grass, and it's,
That's not a patio.
Well, you can make it permeable.
you can make them
There's
permeable.
no
but-
such thing, I mean, there's no such thing as a paved surface that's permeable. That is not,
Well, you can do
the
permeable
town,
pavers.
You can do right.
You
that
can do
nobody
things-
accepts those as permeable. Who accepts those as permeable?
That's a low impact development
Okay,
method that's used a lot.
oh, yeah,
As long
For-
as you can show you've got the soils and getting the
yeah,
infiltration rates, they're
Okay.
recommended everywhere.
I mean, I always knew Bob to say, you know, if it's even gravel, everything
Well,
from
gravel's not
gravel.
considered permeable
Yeah.
in most states anymore. Yeah, but you can design it to have permeable pavers system.
Yeah,
There's a lot
okay.
of technology out there that you can use, you know, it's preferred in many cases, you know,
Around the
to
pool.
minimize, you know, you know, the amount of impervious
Well,
cover that
if
you
you
have.
if you move the pool, then the area right around the pool is outside the buffer.
Mm,
The other point too is this property is in the environmental overlay district. And the primary function of that was to improve water quality and water quality maintenance. So even though you're behind the house, there's a lot of existing, disturbance. I mean, the lawn and, lawn conversion years
Yeah.
ago. So there's opportunities to improve the buffer and protect that.
Right,
So that's why the board, works with that 150-foot buffer, because they wanna maximize what they can
Sure.
do to either restore or enhance or, improve,
yeah,
the existing function. So I think what I'm hearing from you guys is you'd like to see an alternative presented.
One
That
other
just
question, you
shows
show a
that you
sink.
take a serious look at.
yeah,
Is there drainage? You're
What
bringing
can be
water
done?
to the sink.
right. Yeah, that would get tied back into the house drainage system, yeah, pipe back into that. I think that's their only, water usage out there.
So I think the goal would be to see how you could pull as much as feasible out of the buffer, and see, what kind of scenario you can come up with to satisfy.
This could be the fire pit
his
for now.
concerns.
Also, I think it should incorporate the pool and the spa on the same drawing, so we can see the whole thing with the drawdown for the pool and drainage and kind of,
Because
In
you
one
need to
place.
account for the, drainage for the pool too, with
Yeah.
stormwater.
Okay,
The drawdown,
that way you can see it all in one place.
yeah, I'm not quite sure I know what you're saying there, in terms of,
The drawings that go along with the pool usually show
Oh.
where the pool drawdown would go.
okay, I understand what you're saying, okay, like the permit plans that they filed, okay.
So I think what I'm hearing is the board's recommendation would be that the building permit is rescinded due to, inaccurate information presented, and going forward, you would need to, get approval from, the board for the pool and, the other, aspects of the project.
And at this point, what's the timing in the plans vis-a-vis the zoning board?
Zoning board, we're having the first meeting at the end of February.
Have you filed anything with
We
them?
filed the building permit, we have to now file the zoning board by the end of this week. So we're slated for their agenda by the end of February. So I would anticipate we're on a schedule, if they approve it at the end of February, we have to come back at the end of March for their approval of the resolution. That means soonest we'd have a building permit would be April.
Who's the pool company that submitted the pool?
Chris Carthy, Pools of Perfection. Yeah.
Didn't they know that?
No, we talked, honestly, it never came up. And I think it never came up because it was in the backyard, the pond's in the front yard, the house is 150 feet from the pond.
So we saw as that was outside our radius.
Nobody thought that there would be a radius there. Obviously, if there was thought about, well, the wetlands could be into the lawn, because the lawn, it's a lawn right to the edge of the wetlands, right to the edge of the water. But, I'd certainly say the owner did not, there was obviously no intention on anybody's part on the ownership side, the pool company or us, to
No.
invade anything. It just never
No.
came up.
Innocent error.
Yeah, stuff happens.
Forgive me for saying, but I think the owner's not gonna be happy to hear that the town issued the permit, and now it's,
Town issued the permit on faulty information.
I don't know there was faulty information provided. All the information that the town requested was provided.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be happy either.
I wouldn't be happy either, but if you weren't involved in that and it was the pool company involved, then who he should be annoyed at is his pool company, because his pool company, if they're filing for the permits, should be aware
They should be know that.
of what the restrictions are.
If they,
I think as Steve says, I think everybody's aware of 100 foot buffer. I mean, that's generally when you ask anybody, that's
The
100
overlay-
foot buffer.
The overlay and the difference with this section of town has been in effect for a long time.
This is a property that
This
you
is not new.
But this is a property you should have been extra careful.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things going on that are not correct. The last thing, you know, if you're doing this
Yeah.
as a pool company, you should have been extra careful.
Yeah.
Ask the question if nothing else.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cause you know that there's a whole bunch of stuff going on,
yeah.
which is fine.
But again, yeah, so just to be clear, nobody was trying to
No, I know.
hide
No,
anything,
but
so,
when you say that the owner is not gonna be pleased,
yeah,
you know, you should direct his displeasure in the appropriate direction,
yeah, okay.
if you have a chance.
Sure.
To him.
No, because obviously, I mean, they've excavated the pool, so you're suggesting that they, relocate the excavated pool.
Maybe they gotta get a settlement with their pool company.
And
No, it's easier to deal with it now than
Yeah.
another 2-3 months when
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, forgive me. It's the place they would like it to be on the property.
Sure.
The disturbance of that whole rear yard was pre-existing disturbed. It's gonna be substantially disturbed in any event. I think your concern would appropriately be, what are you gonna do in the front yard to protect the wetland from drainage issues going to the front yard? The owner's perfectly willing to accommodate that request, I think, to,
No, it's not a request, it's a requirement.
well,
So-
We're
well,
not-
there could be other
Bill-
things that
Bill,
you'd be looking for.
We're not there yet,
Okay,
because we can't, under the ordinance, we can't issue a permit for something like this without being convinced that there is no viable alternative. Meaning that there's no viable way to do the project without impacting the buffer.
yeah,
So it's incumbent on you and the applicant to go ahead and let us see what the alternatives are.
okay,
And, you know, then to the extent that there is still, there's still impact from the new patio, from the new extension,
yeah,
then we can deal with mitigation conditions on the permit for that. But
yeah. Yeah,
What I will do tomorrow is I will meet with the building inspector, review the file, make sure there's nothing in the file, and I do wanna check whether, you know, cause some of the codes have, if the permit's been issued, you know, they have certain rights, and I don't know whether that means it would be subject to an appearance ticket approach versus, you know, rescinding information, so I'd wanna get
Yep,
more of an interpretation on
Makes sense.
yep.
that before we proceed.
mm,
But, I mean, generally, the law in the state of New York is that even when a permit is issued erroneously because of a mistake made by the municipality,
Mhm.
that doesn't grandfather or
Okay.
validate the permit. There are famous cases of a building in Manhattan, you're probably aware of.
12
case-
stories took them
The case
to
they
take off.
told them to take down back in the
Right.
80s.
Right, I know that one, right.
Yep. Yep. Even though they had a validly issued permit.
Right.
Or a permit that was issued.
Right.
If not validly.
Right, right,
Yep. Yeah, so as David said, I mean, we're still ahead of the game. All you got so far is a hole in the
there's a
ground.
hole in the ground, understood. Okay, so
All right.
coming back with an alternate plan on the rear yard, any other guidance that you?
Well, I think the directive would be to see whether you can avoid the buffer, you know, or how you minimize it, so looking at your patio surfaces, you know, any
Okay.
disturbance that's within it, I mean, only the propane tank outside of the buffer, you know,
Okay,
there's things like.
even though it's underground,
Yeah,
okay. Okay,
As much as can get pulled outside of it, the easier the
Yeah.
issues
Right.
become.
Is this the pool, is this the
Equipment.
workings, the equipment?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was
So you got the equipment back there.
Sure.
Oh.
Right, and that had, I mean, again, that went with the permit for that, staying within the setbacks.
Right, well, the equipment made it back there.
Right.
But again, if you're going to zoning board anyway, I wouldn't worry about the setback
Yeah.
issues,
Right. Right.
given the layout of these properties.
Right.
And the fact that you don't have a neighbor with a house
Correct.
right on the other side of the property line.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I do recall, our neighbor, the Winer's pool. Do you remember that one on Revort? That was within the wetland buffer, pool and the patio.
How many years ago was
6 years ago?
A little longer.
it? Was it?
About 10 years
a new
ago.
pool?
New pool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I actually do remember
I mean, it was probably in the buffer a little bit.
totally.
Yeah.
I think Bob was the landscape architect, Bob Schwartz.
Switzer.
Schweitzer? Well, yes.
All the names. Great,
It's like a
perfect.
peanut gallery.
I was wondering, what do you,
Yeah, Bob Schweitzer did landscape plan, but I know that, you know, their property abuts the
That's not in the over,
wetland.
that's not in the overlay.
What's that?
That's not in the environmental overlay. isn't it?
Yeah, maybe not, right. Okay, all right, we'll come back with, when's the next meeting?
The 25th, because of the holiday schedules.
Of February,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
And if you wanna, you know, if you wanna put something together and
Yeah.
meet, I'm
so
happy to.
we'll go over it with you, yeah,
Okay.
we'll do that. Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the pool company applied for a tree permit.
Say that again, sorry.
We got this tree permit application in for the pool,
Oh, yeah?
and I'm not sure why it came after the building permit was issued.
I didn't even know they submitted a tree
I mean,
permit.
I didn't either, it just happened, and it's one in the back here apparently. Up on
Okay.
the slope,
On the slope?
so it's a 28 inch.
Oh, yeah?
let's get that pool equipment in.
I have no idea. I did
So,
not know.
I don't know,
Leaves in the pool.
but
Yeah, must be that pool equipment area.
Yeah,
I
got
mean,
the,
it shows 2 trees, but only is asking for 1,
One.
so I don't know what's going on with
So if you
this.
move the pool, maybe you don't have to take the tree down.
But we would, you know, when we're going forward, we should address this as part of.
Yeah, okay,
Maybe
yeah,
it needs to come down, or whatever, we'll work with that. but
yeah,
I'm not, there's not enough information other than just saying it's in the way of
Okay.
improvements.
okay.
But it shows it all the way up on the slope, so I have a feeling maybe it's for the pool equipment or something.
Yeah, all right,
Yeah.
all right, we'll talk about that. Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you
All right,
so
we'll
much.
see you
Thanks.
soon.
Yes.
Good to see you guys.
See you, Bill.
Yes, you did. I can pull another chair.
no, it's not
Thank
actually
you.
small.
There's 3.
In the Lions pool.
Feel like Kreskin back there. Just comes to me.
Paul Winchell?
Paul Winchell. Pre-Kreskin.
Powerball numbers for next week?
I'm sorry, I don't go that deep.
Thanks for seeing us, by the way.
Yes, thank you. So while Seth's rolling out the plans, I could just introduce us, or that's okay with you? So my name is Caitlin Ciolino from Zarin and Steinmetz, on behalf of the applicant Lemony LLC. And with me is Glenn and Seth Ticehurst. So we were last before your board at a joint meeting with the planning board this past summer, where we presented this landscape mitigation plan. Today, we made a formal submission to both your board and the planning board for
2 copies.
the wetlands, stormwater steep slopes and tree permits that we're applying for. But the real main update of our formal submission today, from what you saw back in the summer, was the submission of our stormwater pollution prevention plan. And as a result of some of the measures in the SWIP, there's been very, very minor modifications on this plan, which Glenn and Seth will cover, but again, they're very minor, just to accommodate some of the specific stormwater protection measures. The applicant is looking forward to moving forward as expeditiously as possible. We want to try to take advantage of the spring planting season, and we're looking forward to answering your questions. So I'm going to turn it over.
It might be a benefit, because I know David and Ted haven't had the benefit of being on the property, just to maybe just go through a little bit of the, history, a little bit of the,
Sure. You wanna do that or?
we could show it maybe, I don't know if you brought any maps that show that, or.
Sure, we actually have a plan, an existing conditions plan. So this is what the property currently looks like. It's primarily lawn. There's a mulch path that comes up to the top here. These blue areas are existing plant beds, and this is a stone-lined channel, just sort of.
Why don't we go back even a little further? Ted, you were not on the board when we did this last summer, right? Are
No.
you familiar with this, with where this is at all?
I think I was here once,
Just what's
but not
existing
going
right
back.
now.
Okay.
Yes, okay, I was
You
gonna
might not
say,
recognize Lamini as
Yes.
the applicant, but
yes, I did see this. We did, I was here.
I
Yes.
think so, yeah, I remember
Yeah.
presenting this to you.
But yeah, it was completely wrecked. The last time I was here, there was a big, that they just plowed everything down.
It was a violation, right, and then we were hired. Oh, we can
There was
go
a
back a little bit
bigger
further.
group.
Yeah,
we could go way back.
why don't
We
we
could go
start
way
by
back.
the 2016 permit?
Yeah, so the
Sure.
2016 permit was for the development and we're in the overlay district as well, and we went back and forth on a line. We get it, don't cross the line. Everything came out. So in terms of the pool, in a pool house. So we ended up having this done, and while that was being done and finalized, the contractor had got up here and taken a bunch of trees down, so there was a violation issued.
That's what I.
Right, so then we came on board basically to create a plan to address that violation. And we've had several back and forths with this board, the planning board, Bob Cioli, and we're at a point now, I think, where, we've come up with this mitigation plan that shows a lot more diversity in terms of what's there, what was there even. So the bonus to all of this too is now that we've been able to develop the stormwater plan to show that there is no increase in runoff as a result of the work that's been done. So that's been engineered. Steve's got a copy of that, so the SWIP is in place. Another part of our negotiation has been with Bob Cioli and the Highway Department about trying to correct a problematic drainage situation at the bottom of along Carl Street. And, our numbers are showing that this does not create that. There has been some of that going on for a long, long time. But the client has we have submitted a plan on behalf of the client that basically addresses those culverts, a paved swale down there. So, and this has been with conversations with Bob Cioli to come up with a way to remedy, remedy that situation at the same time.
So since the disturbance that was, that's the violation relates to, there have been significant plantings. And in addition to those, we're proposing a new set of landscape mitigation plantings. And this plan shows both the.
Right, so as I was saying before, this plan shows the plantings that have already been installed by the homeowner. And this plan shows really what we're proposing, and this plan shows a very rich, diverse landscape of proposed meadows, plant beds that consist of native perennials and shrubs. We have bioretention basins up here to collect stormwater. We're widening the stone channel to help water pool. We're adding stone check dams to prevent erosion as the water comes down here. We're also taking out stones within the bottom of this stone swale to let water percolate into the soil, and we can create some plant pockets.
I remember talking about that when
Yeah, so we get more infiltration through there, pond the water a little bit so we can slow the water down.
Yep.
Also, the planting in there too, I think will really help to mitigate that, the flow of water through there. We're also dealing with, on the stormwater, you know, Seth had mentioned, you know, this bioretention area here. There's some in-ground infiltration areas over in here, and there's some additional infiltrators that will be occurring down here. So we've really tried to capture this in several different places to really mitigate any of that runoff.
And one of the changes in this plan compared to the last proposed plan that was submitted was that originally we only had one bioretention basin right here. Now we've added another one over here to help mitigate that stormwater runoff.
And we still have the same number of plantings as was presented this summer. They've just been slightly reconfigured to fit the basin. The area disturbance also remains the same.
Have you seen this already? Or is this new to you too?
So I haven't seen the revised plan. I mean, everything they've mentioned is what we discussed in the field and at the planning board meeting.
There's been a lot of back and forth also with Bob, you know, to make sure that he's comfortable.
What the town was interested in is to kind of correct a long-standing issue and
Yep,
so
no, I remember the conversations about it.
on that, and so they've had discussions with Department of Public Works and the town engineer to see what could be done to rectify some of that and also address the stormwater. You know, they've submitted a stormwater management plan, which Bob will, you know, Scioli will review, you know, for the planning board there. The way this project is set up, and which I think you may remember, is we've got three different approving authorities. You know, the trees are under my jurisdiction as the environmental coordinator, and the wetland permit is the environmental review board, and the planning board for steep slopes and stormwater. It's just the way the codes are written, is there's no provision to have one board, you know, take over responsibility for the others, so that's why we've had, you know, joint meetings with the planning board, and I think the desire is to coordinate as much as feasible, you know, the concerns of both boards, you know, to get it to work out.
And we'll be before the planning board at their next meeting, February 19th, thank you.
One thing we're really excited about with this plan is the plant diversity, because we did some sample plots. Over here was one, and then we did two on this side to see what plants existed in the forest surrounding this area. What did this used to be? And there really wasn't much understory. It's a lot of older trees, a lot of deer browse, and a lot of invasive plant material. So by introducing a lot of these native plants, we feel that we'll really be able to increase the diversity and the habitat that exists on this property.
Yeah, there's some really interesting combinations of plants here. So obviously the planting helps with stormwater, which is always a big deal, but for us, you know, just having these diverse environments, especially with this riparian layer adjacent to the drainage way along that northern property line, this can really, I think, transform kind of what it looks like up there.
And our stormwater calculations did not take into account the mitigation plantings. In discussions with the town engineer, we revised the calculations should not include those. So in addition to the stormwater measures, which is what our SWIP is based on, these additional plantings will provide additional stormwater benefits.
Right.
So one of the things we had asked them to do is, because we had no record of the amount of tree removal, and so they did a forestry sampling analysis to try to get an idea of the number of trees, and what they ended up coming up with was 636 trees based on the diameter that were removed at an average diameter of about 10 inches in size. And so that translates into, based on the tree replacement criteria, ended up being, with our new revised amendment to the tree ordinance, it was 159 trees that they would have to replace on site, I think it was.
Plus all the shrubs,
Yeah.
right.
And then the provision in the tree ordinance now allows to count one tree as equivalent to the planting of 8 shrubs. And so, we recommended that they take, advantage of that if they can.
Especially the areas like with the steep slopes too, the amount of disturbance to plant a big tree is pretty significant versus if we can do it with shrubs, which can get established much quicker, that does help.
So based on the amount of planting they've done already, plus what's proposed, they can meet the tree replacement requirement.
Is the property gonna be fenced, or is it
It is
fenced in?
fenced,
It is fenced.
It is, yeah.
Which is the good news because it's tough to keep the deer off of this stuff. So we have that going for us.
So, one of the biggest hurdles is the stormwater, and, the town engineer has, he will be reviewing that and making recommendations, but, because of the amount of disturbance, it's almost, 6.5 acres, I guess.
Yes, I
total
think so.
disturbance. The one good thing is they put sod everywhere, so, it
It's easy
at
to
least
come up.
provided some initial
Stable.
stabilization. Otherwise, we'd be looking at, huge piles of
Oh my God, yeah.
soil on the other side of Sorrow Street.
Right. With canyons
Yeah.
of erosion.
My basic feeling is, even though it's,
We can move these around.
resulted in
No, it's the old one.
resulted in a significant amount of, disturbance, the proposed plan that I'm seeing in the diversity is much better than what was there existing. And so I see that as to me, it's a, real benefit,
Yeah.
we don't have too many,
Unfortunate the way it happened, but, at the end of the process, it may be better off.
I think the biggest challenge is keeping this, sustainable.
Yes, and we've also developed a monitoring plan for Steve
Yeah.
that
And I
will
think we
be
probably
very
wanna-
specific.
What kind of bonds are they talking about?
Well, the tree ordinance requires a minimum of 5-year, there is discretion to, expand that, and then the wetland ordinance, traditionally we've done 5. The planning board has done 10 on some of the newer developments, recently.
And this is something where I would err on the side of longer length.
And with the steep slopes, our steep slope ordinance doesn't have a lot of specific provisions, but it does have the planning board flexibility, in terms of the amount of vegetation. And what I would recommend is, that maybe we consider putting the bond to include the entire disturbed area. I don't know whether we can do that legally, because of the different codes on that, but.
Is the entire area sprinkled?
A lot of it is, I'm not sure if it's 100% of that area, but there is irrigation up there, which is gonna be kind of key to make sure the stuff gets a good start.
And we do, I believe our mitigation plan it's 5 years of monitoring.
Yeah, that's
We
usually
submitted it
what
today,
Right, that's in the bundle.
and then what we submitted today.
And typically how the 5-year plan, monitoring plan and bond is, it's based on 35% of the cost of the plantings and installation.
Which
They
will be
said
a
they
lot
would
better.
post that bond for a 5-year period,
Yeah.
to maintain that.
I would get with Bob and Kirkwood and
I mean, do
see
you
whether we
wanna,
can come up with some kind of consensus as to, what people think is appropriate, but as I say, I would err on the side of being, more protective.
because I guess we always run the risk if she were to decide to sell the property.
Right,
We
right,
would wanna make sure that this would stay in place.
right.
Doing something
Right.
a little bit more long-term might make sense on that. Or a provision that has to carry over to the new owner.
Right.
And do some
Deed
kind of
restriction of
restrictive
some sort.
covenant.
Yeah.
Does your new plan meet with her expectations?
Yeah, it's been a learning, an educational thing, she comes from a place where, an idealized landscape is what she created up there. And, that doesn't really work here. So we've been hard at work trying to convince her with the proper types of plants, and drawings and plans and photo references, so, we think it's exciting. She's warmed up to it, she's given her blessing on it. It's taken a few go-rounds, but, she's come around to the benefit of what we're trying to do. I mean, she didn't do this because she was trying to create a mess. I don't know how the thing happened, it just got away from her. We weren't aware of it until the violation occurred. And then, by that time it's done, and now what are we gonna do, so.
And we've worked really hard to propose something, and I think as you can see here, the proposed mitigation, as Steve was saying, it really is more diverse. And significantly improves on the current condition.
No, we were pretty excited when we saw this last summer too. There's obviously a lot of thought and creativity and good intentions went into it, so.
They did, and there were several iterations with your
A lot
staff.
of, lot of checks too. That's why Derek said.
It's a tough way to make a living, trust me.
Don't let them, they're excited, they've been getting a lot of
I have to do
commissions.
what? Rip out?
We gotta do that all over again?
Question for you, the grass paths, right? These are obviously just
They're mowed,
mowed
right.
paths through. So how do, one of the things I would be concerned in the
Are they
maintenance
gonna
area.
stay mowed or they wood chips? I thought they were.
For the paths themselves?
This one's a gravel path.
Yeah,
right?
this one is wood chips, like a
Oh, the
mulch
paths,
pad.
I'm sorry.
And then
The
these
wood-
are grass.
Right, the grass
Yeah.
paths.
Yeah.
Some way to delineate that so that they don't expand over time and become lawn area into more and more space. You know, the guy with the mower, right, makes 2 passes instead of 1, and next thing you know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. We could think about how to do that, I'm not sure how to.
Edging really wouldn't work, right? Because it's too low.
No,
What's the material surrounding that?
well, it's really beautiful stuff, I mean, that would.
This is like, this is what I see a lot, right?
Yeah,
Where, assuming that is your path against your.
Yeah, well, that was the
area.
intent, to show this versus that.
Right.
Right?
And that's why I'm saying different ways to do it, but one concern would be that over time, this path becomes.
wider.
Well, it is gonna be monitored, I will say that, so you're gonna, I don't know how often that will be, Steve.
But to alleviate that, maybe we should look at whether there's ways to do
Yeah.
some markings of some kind.
There may be some
You
way
know,
to
subtle
put some
markings, yeah.
rebar or something, I get your point.
You could, I mean, you
Something
can
that
also
would
have
have
the monitoring, I mean, I don't know whether this is something that's gonna be coming in the future or is happening now, I mean, does anybody do?
The GIS scan of the.
No, I was gonna say something like a drone.
Yeah.
You know,
The GIS.
do aerials with a drone, you know, and You can compare, you know, what it's supposed to be with,
Well, we'll dimension, we'll have dimensions somewhere, if you'd like, to, on the width of those paths. Because they're intended to be a uniform, so two people, and she has dogs, can walk through there. And so that, you know, if all of a sudden that thing is
I'm not talking a foot,
15 feet
you know,
wide.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
Then that's something
when the guy
to be
makes two
concerned about
passes
with.
instead of
Right,
one.
That's, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, we've used monuments and that for, you know, boundaries
Sure.
for easements or wetland buffer.
right, but I mean,
I'm
this
not
is
sure
an
what
extensive, this is an extensive series of paths, and I don't know that
I
it's
don't know if
really
you wanna do that.
economical or,
Yeah, that's a,
It's a tough,
Right.
that is
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, maybe.
but if there's a way to monitor it, you know, and measure accurately, so that,
Yeah, one thought is maybe some kind of subtle marker that is easily seen, you know, every 50 feet or 100 feet or something.
Depending on what it looks like.
Yeah,
oh yeah, it's
driveway markers for snow. Reflectors on it.
I like the 5-foot piece of rebar.
maybe pick a certain type of plant that,
We'll try to accommodate that, I'm not sure what the answer is off the top of my head.
You do like golf courses mark 150-yard marker with, you know,
Not a
with a
bounds
certain.
marker.
Well, no, I mean, 150-yard, they mark with
Yeah, they do.
shrubs or trees
Right.
of a certain kind on some courses. And,
There may be a way to do something. Yeah.
We can think of
I don't
something.
know, defining the edge of the beds, maybe, somehow. Because you have, looks like you have different, you know, planting beds.
There's a lot of beds there,
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah,
only
so-
concern, I mean,
Maybe
it's
that, yeah.
thousands of feet of
Yeah,
beds.
give some thought just
All
to
right,
see.
we'll try to come up with something.
Yeah,
We get it, you know, you wanna be able to look at it and make sure that they're staying within the bounds of the approval.
and
It's a
then
gorgeous plan the way it is, you know.
Yeah, and
The
our
question
intent
is how
is,
we get it to stay that way.
stay that way, understood.
Yes.
okay,
Would it be
Looks nice.
beneficial for this board to request to meet with the planning board again, or do you wanna, I mean, to help guide the, I mean, we can
I
prepare
don't know, I
a
mean,
memo.
at this point,
and then-
I would leave it to staff to do
Okay.
the coordination,
Okay,
and,
yeah, because I mean,
our hopes are if you're comfortable with the plan, whatever the next step is.
yeah, because I mean,
You know.
the plan, you know, what's being proposed for plantings in the steep slope area versus the buffer is very similar, so I mean, it, you know, it's a smooth transition, so I,
blends in.
right,
yeah, so I don't see,
If you're comfortable with the planting material and the
right.
yeah,
phasing, that's,
I mean, I would, you know, as I said, you know, with respect to the bond, I mean, my expectation and hope would be that you guys would get together at the staff level, you and, you know, whoever's working on it for the planning board and Bob, then you come to a consensus as to
Right.
your reaction to this.
My inclination is because the planning board has been, for the past probably 2-3 years now, requiring 10-year, you know, monitoring on, you know, larger
Oh,
projects.
okay, yeah.
That would probably be the direction I would see us going.
does that include the,
I would recommend that include the trees and the,
Right.
you know, the plantings within, I mean, specifically within the wetland buffer,
Right.
but I almost would think it'd be appropriate
entire
to do it
project
within the
site.
entire project site. You know, and I don't know, in the steep slope ordinance, I'm not sure whether there's a provision for bonding.
You know, I'd
But
have to
there may
look
be-
at
But
that.
there may be discretion on the part of the planning board to say, let's just fold it in.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know the provision off the top.
Yeah, because we've never really dealt with a
Right.
major steep slope disturbance. We had one on, we'd had one much more minor on Shether and,
Yeah.
what's her name? Not the one on the right side, 97 Shether.
The one that was just sold, do you hear, part by the Harriman
Yeah.
estate?
Yeah.
Is it green
It was,
fence on it?
what was her name? I'm drawing a blank. But they had, you know, they had the big house they tore down. It was the original Bird estate.
Yes, is that the Sheik's house?
No, not the Sheik's house, across the street.
Across the street, yes, that
Yeah,
just
there
sold.
was a big slope up in the back that they cleared years
Oh.
ago. And there was a mitigation plan, I think about 1,000, 1,500 trees put in.
When was that?
I don't know, say about 10 years ago.
Oh.
It was one of the first big disturbances.
Still monitoring it.
I was on this property with a realtor when somebody was looking at
Do you
it.
remember ever seeing, there might still
I
be
didn't see
temporary fencing around it.
I don't remember if it's the same piece I'm thinking about. I mean, it's a major
Yeah,
piece of property. It's probably 20 acres.
yeah. I know they moved to North Salem, I just can't think of their name.
Okay, yes, I met the woman who was selling the house.
Yeah,
And then some guy from one of these electronic currency companies
yeah, 'cause,
interested in buying it.
Jerry Barrett did the mitigation
Oh, he
plan
did.
for them, so. But,
I'm sure Jared did a great job.
What's a growing period for a planting plan like this?
I'm sorry?
A growing period before it reaches kinda
Oh,
what
well,
your thoughts are of,
this will look fairly mature. I mean, they're not gonna be gigantic, but you're gonna notice a real difference after like 2 or 3 seasons.
I mean, most trees have their, like 2.5 inch caliber, well, like your maples will put on 10 to 12 feet per year.
Yeah, that's kind of a sweet spot right
Yeah.
there. When they get a little bit
And
bigger, they're
shrubs will
slower
grow
growing.
About, 8 to 10 feet too in height usually, or more. The biggest thing on a slope like this is you really want, a lot of the growth is going into the ground with the root network.
right?
And that's why,
Anchor it in.
that's why we wanted to see them use more ground covers and other things too, to get a better network of.
I'm sure there's something about the irrigation piece to it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see there is irrigation, because I don't know how you would maintain something like this without it.
No, you're really gonna need it.
Yeah,
You won't need as
wouldn't
much
be
of it
able
once
to.
it's established and
Yeah.
kind of self-sufficient, but.
It's
One
the
thing
incoming
for
water
the,
service for this
one
thing.
thing for the tree, for the tree permit, do you have records of the trees you planted?
Yes,
The original
you have
plan?
counts.
So you could do like a species and quantity and size?
I think we already have, I think we've done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
And
might
then
be in
for-
there already.
And plus the
Then the
additional
other
ones,
stuff on
yeah.
top of it, yep,
Yeah, so if we can get a complete listing of that, then it would be helpful.
okay.
Okay, is there any other questions or? So I think what I'm take away from me is I think you're hearing that it's definitely what we wanted to see.
But we're in favor of the plan, it's now taking it to, yes, thank you. The next step, we'll, at the planning board and
Yeah, I
dealing
think,
with
I
Bob.
think that's the bigger challenge is, I think they should be pleased with what you've done.
Yeah, I think there was a good reaction at the joint meeting.
Yeah, but it's really addressing, the stormwater. to
That's
Bob's
the
satisfaction.
major difference, right?
And that's the main addition to this most recent submission,
okay,
we'll work
yeah.
with.
Cause they've been waiting for that, so we'll let Bob.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've worked that all out, the testing's been done and witnessed and signed off, and
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah, so I mean, if you meet that criteria, I think, I see it moving pretty.
That will be great.
Yeah.
I know they wanna get it wrapped up too, it's been a pain for everybody.
Okay, so you're on for the 19th?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for coming in.
very much.
Thank you.
You don't want this to end though. I can tell, you're very excited, you're very excited.
I'm very excited.
Keep logging those out.
That's quite a feat. Barry was up, I think, for the last week.
Educate me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Come back and it's
Alright.
that, usually you just, if it's a wetland, you don't wanna,
We don't like pools in the buffer
why is that?
because it's,
More than a patio.
well, a patio can be made permeable, number one. And a pool, unlike an extension on a small house to build a bedroom, we get these applications in the ridge all the time to expand the house into the buffer. The houses were grandfathered, they were built well before the ordinance. and you can't, you've got a growing family and they need room.
Right.
You're much more kind of amenable to something like that, where it's enhancing and making the house livable, as opposed to something like a pool,
That's
Which is more
which is
of an
a
amenity.
pure
more
amenity.
pure luxury.
Is a pure amenity,
Right.
and, you know,
So
it's just, we see it
does it
differently.
Steve, does the pool have any more impact on that, on the whole thing, more than
An actual substantive impact on the wetlands?
yeah, like is it just, I'm just
Yeah,
okay,
pool
well,
water.
Presumably, but
Chemicals.
depending on how it's purified, you know, I mean, they're not doing that much chlorine anymore, right? Or
We still do, yeah.
But, you
A
know.
lot of it is saltwater based, but that has its own inherent concerns too, just for potential contamination. I mean, the new technology keeps getting better, you know, for, with the
is it
cartridge
digging,
system.
is it when you're digging into the ground for a pool, there's more disturbance as opposed to?
During the
That's it.
construction of it,
Yeah.
there's still heavy equipment and
Yeah, compaction in the soil around.
So the
yeah.
point, the position of the board has been, if to not allow pools under any circumstances is the first
Well, I mean,
rule of thought.
but that's the way the ordinance is written too.
Yeah.
No, I don't
Yeah.
agree with that. It's really been trying to avoid.
Avoid having
Not
it in the
now.
buffer.
The answer's been, first step, try to avoid it.
Right.
Second step, try to mitigate it.
Yeah.
Right, first avoid it, then mitigate it, but not just assume it can be put in, especially with somebody who has recently bought a piece of property,
Got it.
knowing full well that's a no-no.
This
Okay.
particular individual had wetlands on his property in Crow Hill, so he should have known enough to ask questions.
We had a similar issue with the pool building with somebody else, where we got into this discussion about it's in the wetland zone setback. If you move it 20, I'm making it up, 20 feet that way.
This application we did, they
No,
went
no,
through
not-
several iterations to pull the pool.
Another homeowner that had a pool that wanted to build the bathroom, kitchen,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
right, around the side of the pool.
Mhm.
And it was, if you just moved it over there,
The pool
it would
equipment,
be out of the,
Yeah.
they found a place for the
Setback.
pool equipment. Where the pool could go where the pool equipment is.
there's no doubt.
It's pretty different.
It's nicer to have it in the center.
It didn't look to me to be
If
that
that's what
hard,
they like.
but I just
The one
want,
argument we always hear though,
I want to
is
just
that
understand more.
the argument we always hear, we heard from Bill tonight, is that you
Mason.
want you want the pool right next to the house.
Right.
So that the mother can watch the little kids
From
Right.
inside the
from
house.
inside the house.
Yes,
Right.
please.
Right.
Right, you should be locked up if that's the case.
But consistent with federal and state guidelines, our code is set up the same way, is that, the first step is avoidance, is to
Right.
see,
Mhm.
if you can avoid the disturbance.
And the way the ordinance is
And then you
written,
minimize,
but the way the ordinance is written, technically, if there's any way to do it without impacting the buffer, you have to do it.
Period. Right. And even that means cutting into a hill.
Right.
I mean, because you can cut into a
That is one of the
hill.
ways to do it.
You can cut into a hill.
Yeah, of course you could.
You
I mean,
know, and
I
that
have-
didn't look like that bad.
I
That
mean,
was,
I said, it
That
doesn't
was
look like that bad a hill to me. I've seen worse.
right, you got a blast, maybe you got a blast, you got a blast.
You don't even have to go that far.
Well, if it's rock, you might have to do some blasting, but, I mean,
But sometimes it's a balancing act too, I mean, you look at the position of where it is, what the condition of the property is, and then it should all be tied back to, what are the functions that are, this buffer is providing,
Right.
to the wetland.
Okay.
If they can demonstrate that, we've done what we can to minimize, and the board's comfortable with it, then that's where the mitigation steps in, is what can you do to improve either the existing condition,
Mm-hmm.
of the buffer area, or do additional measures that will, like in this case, improve the overall plant diversity, which, influences the, the animals, that, wildlife that'll utilize the property, and then,
Right.
water quality is probably one of the biggest, aspects we look at is, water quality in terms of attenuating stormwater flows, because plants and well-vegetated buffers, filter and trap nutrients and, retain the waters, move it slower through the system. Wetlands are basically nutrient sinks, so they, accumulate a lot of the material and keep it out of the water supply and that kind of thing. So that's how that kind of progression is, and that's why, we, like in that case, I mean, it's important that they present an alternative.
Yeah,
Whether they, and unfortunately in this case, they got way ahead of the game. I mean,
well, the pool guys screwed up.
That wasn't done by mistake.
The pool guys,
That was done by mistake.
the pool guys, how could you, the pool guy not know that? If you're a good pool guy, if you're a good pool landscaper, you would, that's a big mistake, especially on that road. I mean, it's, even I could figure that out.
I don't have any other items, I mean, at some point, if you want, what we can do is, we can do a site visit of, both properties, if you thought it would be helpful, to see them. Maybe wait until we see, what they come back
It
with.
might be useful to go to one. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, so we can evaluate that once they submit it.
So I got my son a ride now on Mondays when I have meetings.
Oh, great.
Because I had, he's in the Greater Youth Westchester Orchestra, so on Mondays I have to take him down to the WCC to play, to practice. And then our friends, I was like, wait a minute, so I got him a ride home. Because that's why I used to have to leave early to pick him up.
That's good.
Wait.
We should need to,
Do I need do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Somebody gotta make the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.